Good afternoon. It's Monday, March 7th. I'm Laura Kornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. A potential coalition crisis is brewing following Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans to designate a special area in the Western Wall for mixed prayer. Ultra-Orthodox members of Netanyahu's coalition informed the Prime Minister they will quit the government if it goes ahead with the plan or enacts any measures that could be interpreted as official state recognition of Reform or conservative Judaism. The coalition currently rests on a razor-thin 61-seat majority, which means that the departure of any single party can bring the government down. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has endorsed a bill that would prohibit political organizations from accepting donations during an election campaign. The bill, proposed by Likud Knesset member Yoav Kish, is aimed at targeting organizations such as the V15, who worked against Netanyahu and the Likud party in the last elections. The legislation is reportedly designed so that an organization that conducts polls, registers voters, or publishes ads in the media will not be able to receive donations totaling more than 20,000 shekels a month. Responding to the proposed legislation, V15, which is now called Darkenu, Our Way, said the state of Israel is far bigger and better than Netanyahu. The organization claims that hundreds of thousands of Israelis identify with them and want to see Israel have the leadership it deserves. A company commander in the Kfir Brigade was suspended for 1 year, and a platoon commander and sergeant removed from their positions. This following a probe into the stabbing of 2 soldiers at the entrance to Har Bracha last Wednesday night. The probe, conducted by the commander of the Kfir Brigade, revealed serious irregularities and deficiencies in the soldiers' actions from what is expected from combat troops. The 2 soldiers who were lightly wounded in the attack had left their weapons inside the security booth contrary to orders. A decision regarding their punishment will be taken once they recover from their injuries. The Shin Bet security agency announced the recent arrest of a terrorist who recruited Palestinians from the West Bank studying in Egypt and collected funds to finance terrorist activities against Israel. 33-year-old Mohammed Nazal of Kabatia was arrested as he returned to Israel via Jordan at the end of January. According to details released by the Shin Bet, Nazal moved to Cairo to study in 2007 and joined the Khatib al-Mujahideen terror group there. He allegedly told his interrogators that his job was to track down and recruit West Bank Palestinians studying in Egypt and send them for military training in Gaza before they were dispatched to the West Bank as terrorist operatives. IDF forces arrested 3 Turkish nationals who attempted to cross into Israel from Jordan overnight. Soldiers spotted the men near Kibbutz Grofit outside of Eilat and notified border police officers to investigate. In a separate development, IDF forces arrested 14 Palestinians from the West Bank, suspected of involvement in the recent upsurge of violence and clashes with IDF troops operating in the area. Part of the pre-dawn crackdown took place in the Kalandia refugee camp, where violent clashes broke out last week between soldiers and local residents after a couple of IDF troops accidentally entered the area. Culture and Sports Minister Miri Regev is at it again.
Cut the bullshit! Cut the bullshit!
Those were the words chosen by Regev for her opening remarks at a special arts and culture conference last night, hosted by the Haaretz newspaper. Her message was directed at a crowd of demonstrators who booed her and stood with their mouths gagged in protest of what they consider the government's attempts to stifle dissent in the arts. The protests come in the wake of a month-long dispute over controversial legislation Regev proposed, which would end government funding to cultural institutions that are deemed disloyal to the State of Israel. Regev also took issue with the Haaretz newspaper, charging the conference, titled Culture Demands Independence, was an insult to the liberal paper, which regards itself as the thinking person's newspaper. During her address, Regev announced she intends to revoke a law approved 2.5 years ago that prevents sellers from offering discounts on books. The minister said she hopes to have the law reversed in time for National Book Week, slated to take place in June. Despite his current wave of victories in local primaries, U.S. Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump is continuing to raise the concerns of many, including many from within his own party, who accuse him of being racist. Israel Television's Yaakov Elon spoke to Jonathan Greenblatt, director of the Anti-Defamation League, about the contentious contender and asked him about his approach to the Jewish community.
Is Donald Trump a racist?
Well, I'm not in a position, I think, to tell you who Donald Trump is. I can only respond to what Donald Trump has said. And some of the things that Donald Trump has said, in particular, have concerned us here at the Anti-Defamation League. Comments he's made about Mexicans, comments he's made about Muslims, comments he's made about women, and recently comments he's made or not made about white supremacists. So those things lead us to conclude whether or not he is a racist or Islamophobe or a misogynist or a white supremacist. We wish he would use his language a bit more carefully and kind of represent the values that we think are so important in our political process.
The fact that he was playing around with the David Duke's endorsement, what does it tell you?
Well, it's certainly worrisome. I mean, I think what we are seeing, and to be clear, Mr. Trump has very carefully and deliberately and repeatedly said, quote, "I disavow." And that's the one word he has used to distance himself from David Duke and other white supremacists. But the fact of the matter is, his failure to reject and repudiate their racism, their anti-Semitism, their hate, with the same clear terms that he has used in the presidential debates, or that he's used in his rallies, or that he's used about the other candidates. That lack of symmetry in the way he talks about white supremacists and racists has helped to mainstream them into this political conversation. And that's what we find so problematic.
Even the Republican leadership is deeply worried about Trump's statements. Are you worried that Donald Trump in the White House is a signal to racism to raise its head in America?
Well, look, we are already seeing racism raise its head right now through social media and other means. There apparently was a white supremacist press outlet that was literally credentialed and participated in the Trump rally event on Tuesday night after he won a number of primaries on that day. We have also seen white supremacists express some degree of delight and satisfaction that their recruiting is up during this campaign season because Trump has allowed them again, even if inadvertently, even if he has truly not said something in support of them, but he has failed to condemn them, that's allowed them to be mainstreamed into the conversation. So I got to tell you, I have no idea what a Trump presidency would bring, but I certainly don't like what a Trump candidacy is bringing out in terms of these white supremacists. And just so we're clear, they're bad for blacks and Latinos and Jews in particular. I mean, these are not our friends.
Staying with the U.S. elections, and Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders last night defended his Jewish heritage. Here's what he had to say when asked if he was intentionally downplaying his Jewishness.
Look, my father's family was wiped out by Hitler in the Holocaust. I know about what crazy and radical and extremist politics mean. I learned that lesson as a tiny, tiny child when my mother would take me shopping and we would see people working in stores who had numbers on their arms because they were in Hitler's concentration camp.
The government's Housing Cabinet convened this afternoon to discuss a new plan that will allow up to 6 foreign building companies to operate in Israel with the aim of increasing housing construction and lowering its cost. According to the initiative, which was proposed by Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon and Housing Minister Yoav Gallant, each of the 6 companies will be permitted to bring in up to 1,000 foreign employees who will join forces with local contractors. The plan has sparked much opposition among local construction companies who claim such a move will severely hamper the country's building industry, lead to their collapse, and the liquidation of small independent contractors. In a separate development, the House and Cabinet today approved the construction of new dormitory units for 20,000 students over the next 4 years. The new units will be built in the vicinity of academic institutions across the country. More archaeological findings have been revealed in Jerusalem. 2 stone seals engraved in ancient Hebrew script with the names of a man and woman who lived in the city of David 2,500 years ago were uncovered during digs by the Israel Antiquities Authority. The names on the seals, Eliana, the daughter of Goel, and Serayahu, the son of Shebnayahu, were revealed during excavations at the city of David inside a large building dating back to the First Temple. Archaeologists of the IAA said the seals were used for signing documents and were frequently inlaid as part of a ring worn by the owner. The Israel Museum has opened a new exhibit which features a period less known to many people, titled Pharaoh Incan, The Untold Story. The display hopes to tell the tale of 2 cultures in one land. We get more in this report from IBA's Ari O'Sullivan.
When you envision an exhibit about the Pharaonic era, you get sarcophagi, pottery, engraved tablets. This and other artifacts uncovered in excavations here and borrowed from museums abroad take us back 3,500 years. In the year 1457 BCE, Pharaoh Thutmose III put down a Canaanite revolt, conquered Megiddo, and that led to a 350-year rule at the height of the Egyptian power that stretched from the Nile to the Euphrates. The upper-class Canaanites adopted the Egyptian ways. This was reflected in their jewelry and luxury items. And the Egyptians were influenced by the indigenous Canaanites, adopting their weaponry and local gods. The exhibit shows various pharaohs. Ancient Egyptians also liked to portray their gods as animals. Animals also appear in the jewelry. The beads and necklaces look like they come from a contemporary jewelry shop. There are seals and games, items from the day-to-day living. But then there was death. These are anthropoid coffins in the shape of humans. They were used to bury Egyptian governors, officers, and high-class local Canaanites who adopted the Egyptian ways. They were found in digs here and painstakingly renovated by experts of the Israel Antiquities Authority. There is also on display a gift given by Egyptian President Anwar Sadat to Prime Minister Menachem Begin in honor of the peace treaty with Egypt. It is a copy of a bent sword found in the tomb of the Pharaoh Tutankhamun to symbolize the end of war. The Egyptian rule over Canaan didn't leave many artifacts under the layers of later conquerors, but here's a chance to see a rare collection at the Israel Museum now.
Buckle up. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro recently took some time off from his diplomatic work and went for a drive into the future of transportation, testing Israeli-developed mobilized self-driving car along the streets of Jerusalem. Highly impressed and excited, Shapiro said self-driving vehicles signify the future and highlight how rapidly technology is advancing. He added that American automakers are strongly embracing these latest technologies, which will dramatically reduce the number of road accidents, save lives, and prevent countless injuries. Last month, the Japanese car giant Nissan signed an agreement of understanding with the homegrown Mobileye road systems, integrating the automatic digital map technology in their new fleet of vehicles.
I have to say, the first time I've ever been in a vehicle where the driver was not in control, and I already feel much safer than I ever would have imagined, and I could see that it's probably safer than if a driver was in control of the vehicle, because drivers can be distracted, but this vehicle cannot. So it's pretty impressive, and looking forward to driving one of these myself.
The Ramat Gan Safari Park went into emergency mode yesterday after 8-year-old Tibor, the rhinoceros, escaped through an open gate in an attempt to paint the town red. Surveillance cameras caught the young rhino as he ventured outside, trotting towards the park exit. However, his brief escape to freedom quickly came to an end after park personnel succeeded in capturing and escorting him back to his natural surroundings and in the safari and his waiting friends. In local money matters, shares on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down, while the shekel weakened in foreign currency trading. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast is calling for yet another rise in temperatures. Sure-off heat wave conditions are expected throughout the day tomorrow across the country. Here's a look at the highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. And that brings us to the end of this broadcast of IBA News. I'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel. Until then, have a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.